Low block defending is one of the most talked about ideas in modern soccer, and also one of the most misunderstood. Some people hear low block and they think negative football, catanaggio, park the bus. Others think that it's just everyone standing in the box and hoping for the best. In reality, a good low block is organized, coordinated, and very deliberate. I'll show you both sides of it, how to set it up from a defensive side and how to break it when you face it. Well, what is a low block? A low block is a defensive organization where a team defends deep in their own half, usually close to their penalty area, within the first third of the field. The difference between a high press defending and a low block defending is the area. Basically, letting the opponent have all the possession they want in their own half, away from your goal, and keeping very compact defense close to your goal. You see, we are redefining the playing area here to be only between our defenders and our attacker in a third or a quarter of the field. So the principle of low block are the following. Keep the area where the team is defending as small as possible, close to our goal. Number 2 is concentrate in the middle, forcing the play to come from the wide areas. And number 3 is be ready to break into a counterattack. The objective is not to win the ball high up in the field. The objective is to control space. In a low block, the team stays compact vertically and horizontally. This is important. A low block is not passive defending. On the contrary, in the area that is being defended, the players are playing with very, very high intensity. Let's start with the structure. The most important thing is not the formation of the low block, but how tight that area is and how we react to changes. The basic rule is that we need to have at least one extra player in the areas of defense. One of the most common and effective shapes for a low block is the 4-4-2 formation. So let's stick with that for now. Against the most common 4-3-3 formation, we have 4 defenders against 3 attackers. We have 4 midfielders against the 3 attacking. And in the base shape, the back 4 and the midfield 4 sit just outside of the penalty area. One of them on the line and one of them just ahead. Keeping that offside line with 4 players is easier than with 5. The entire team is vertically very compact. There is very little space between the lines to penetrate. And in low block, the most important movement is the collective shifting to maintain that numerical superiority. Basically, when we are in a low block, the message we are sending to the other team is, don't even try here. The space is so tight and we have more defenders than you have attackers. So even if they manage to dribble or outrun their marker, the first player, there will be another defender that will just take over. The moment you try to penetrate that final third, the intensity is going to be so high. The challenges are there and often the multiple defenders. So to force you to either lose the ball or pass it back into safety and try again. Look at this example. When the opponent is attacking with 3 players on the left side, to have them outnumbered, we need to defend with 4 players. The entire block shifts towards that side. The far side winger tucks in to the middle, leaving the far third unopposed. The near side winger drops and even the attacker tracks back if needed. The midfield stays narrow. The goal is always the same, protect the center and overload the ball side. We have redefined the playing area here. It's on that side. The opponent must attack the near side or the middle where they are outnumbered or pass it back and recycle the ball again. When the ball is central, the block stays super narrow, making a cone out of the defense. The opponent are invited to pass the ball wide only to their fullbacks, but not all the way to the wingers. If they end up passing to the fullbacks, we shift again to overload that side. The block slides that way, but it never really stretches. The triangle changed shape, but it's still there. No one presses alone and we defend as a team. This looks impossible to break for an attacking team, but there are some tricks. We'll go through 6 situations on how to break a low block and how the low block should respond to these attacks. Note that the starting point in all of these situations is in the wide areas, and the attackers have numerical superiority in them, which is the target of the low block defending team after all. Let's start with the overlapping run. Think of the fullback running forward, ahead of the defensive line. The opposition fullback can either track or leave the winger, or not track and risk the fullback receiving the ball behind the last line. The way to solve this is to communicate well with the other defenders. If the defending winger is tracking the fullback, then the defending fullback can stay on their marker. Alternatively, they can interchange. So the fullback is marking the fullback and the winger is marking the winger. This will be decided on the situation and communication between the players. Similarly, the winger might have the ball wider, and the fullback is not making an overlapping but an underlapping run. The underlapping run can be even more dangerous because it's closer to the goal, and it drags the central defender, not just the fullback. If the central defender doesn't track the runner, then the fullback might not only have a clean cross, but they have a clear shot on goal. So if the overlapping run is executed well, then the defender must track. Well, what's the issue with that? The central defender left the striker in the middle, which is very dangerous. The other central defender should shift and take over, but that might not be enough because we would play man marking at that point. This is when the midfielder must drop to defense. The holding midfielder takes the role of the central defender, covering for this timing issue. If the striker managed to drag both the defenders and the holding midfielder, then there is a gap in the middle. The winger that was initially tracking the fullback should move towards the central area. They can't get in time to cover the striker or the underlapping run, but they can provide compactness in the center. Now, if the attack completed the run successfully, but also the defending team adjusted, it's a 1v1 situation to provide a cross. There's no offset because the ball is ahead of the other players. So that is a success in a way. And we have all four options on the table. The striker is on the first post, there's the winger on the second post, the low cross can also work in either of these cases, and the momentum is such that a cutback to the running midfielders is definitely an option. If you want all the details on crossing, there's a video specific for crossing on the channel, so check it out after this video. But back to our situation, since runs can be dangerous, they're also protected well very often, and often with two defensive players. This leaves space for the winger to do a cross directly, without the run. After all, the objective of the attacking movement is to get in a 1v1 situation, and even better, an unopposed situation. If the objective of the run is to get this opportunity to cross, but we can do it without the pass, then just cross the ball directly, right away. The two targets are in the central area, with the striker or the winger. If the winger is very far on the other side, that's okay. Doing that cross is essentially just a pass to switch the sides that can be extremely valuable. Not only the winger has one-on-one in great area there, but also the entire defensive shape has to shift from one side to the other, creating a different momentum. The faster you get the ball to the other side, the higher chance to get the 1v1 instead of facing numerical disadvantage again. As disciplined as they might be, they're not flawless. And this is where the creativity of the winger should come into play, with crosses, with shots, cutbacks, and dribbles. Finally, let's look at one more situation. The run was successful, but nothing came out of it. The fullback couldn't do a cross, or now they're trying to find out how to recycle the ball back. The simplest solution is not a new one. It's overlaps and underlaps. The fullback with the ball goes into the empty space, which is backwards. But now the winger, who just applied the ball, does an overlap or an underlap to create the opportunity again. This can be repeated several times within 5 or 10 seconds until the defense makes a mistake and we have an opportunity. While the low block assures you don't concede, you cannot play effectively a low block and score goals. Or can you? The famous example is the Inter versus Barcelona Champions League semifinal in 2010. Barcelona played their tiki-taka under Guardiola, dominating every single match. But Mourinho prepared Inter for what ends up being one of the greatest surprises in the history of soccer. Low block for both games, trying to threat the oppositions only with counterattacks. Once there was a chance to score, the striker and the right winger, or the right fullback, were sprinting forward. And it wasn't a chance to score, just to counterattack from their own half. Barcelona, like most other teams, have slower center-backs than other players. They're top-quality center-backs, but after several races against the wingers and the fullback, who smartly took turns in attacking, they capitulated. The first game ended 3-1 for Inter at home, so the second game didn't need counterattacks at all. The low block, with all 11 players, held to 0-0 until the 84th minute when Barcelona scored a goal that was simply not enough to overcome the deficiency from the first game. Now, as a coach, you might ask yourself, how do you coach low blocks? Coaching a low block starts with principles, not drills. It's impossible to coach every single permutation and combination that the attacking team might do. Instead, we coach the principles we discussed in the video so far. The way you coach principle is to set a drill that gives examples to ask questions to the players and then make them think. Let me show you. We will set a simple drill, let's say 6v6 on a half field. But we'll bring one of the goals at the half-point line, so we play with a goalkeeper on each side that helps on the attack too. The special rule is that when out of possession, only one player can be outside of the penalty area. For example, when the right winger has the ball, then the left back can only be outside of the penalty area. But when they pass it back to the middle, then the fullback needs to come back inside the penalty area in order for the midfielder to get out and press. This looks like an artificial constraint, but what it does, it forces compactness inside the penalty area, while also the coaches and it coaches that the players pressuring to apply pressure without losing the shape as a team. And if the possession switches, then the team can attack with players outside of their penalty area. But the other team has the same instructions to come together inside their penalty area and defend in a low block. This creates a more natural and balanced game. The team who just gained possession knows that it's easier to score before the other team regroups. So they need to try and go on the counterattack. But if they can't, then they will prefer keeping possession and explore ways to break the low block later. So while coaching, try to get one or two of the patterns that we talked about before per session. You can coach all 6 of them in a single practice. Instead, make a month-long plan where you will start with 2 of them and then add 1 pattern at each practice. You might need to make a point to make sure that the attacking team tries what you ask them to try instead of following 2 familiar patterns from the previous session. And remember, low block defending is not anti-football. It's a response to space, risk, and context. It's redefining the game to what makes sense at the moment to get a win. Every team plays a low block at some point in a match. Some teams just do it more deliberately than others. The real question isn't whether you'll face a low block, it's whether you'll recognize it early enough to stay patient, organized, and in control. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.